What do you think? 5.1?
The villains of Buffy the Vampire Slayer are some of the series' most beloved characters and some of the most unique and memorable villains television has to offer. Before examining why that is, it's important to first acknowledge that there are villains and then there are villains. Some villains can provoke such intense hatred that you may find yourself disappointed because the death of a character, a 19-year-old boy, was too quick and insufficiently gruesome. But Buffy villains aren't really like that. They aren't written with the goal of making the audience actively hate them. Of course, they still serve traditional villain functions. They provide obstacles for the hero, pushing them to change and develop. They drive the plot forward while creating stakes and urgency. They can act as dark reflections of the heroes themselves, embody the negative themes the story explores, and allow the audience to examine moral failures and their consequences from a safe distance. But the writers aren't interested in making them completely unlikable. More importantly, they don't allow them to remain confined to their villain function. Whether a character serves as the primary antagonist of a single season or becomes one of the show's most beloved recurring characters, Buffy almost always finds ways to also acknowledge them outside of the role of the villain. Through humor, charisma, vulnerability, oddly specific personality traits, or memorable acting choices that make them more entertaining than threatening, the series constantly adds qualities that complicate the audience's perception of them. As a result, many Buffy villains end up being just as enjoyable to spend time with as the heroes themselves. The most obvious example is Spike, whose villain status becomes increasingly difficult to define as the series progresses. He begins as a serious threat, evolves into something of a local idiot, becomes a complicated romantic and sexual interest for the show's protagonist, and eventually earns redemption through suffering and personal sacrifice. But Spike is hardly the only example. Even villains who receive far less screen time are often given moments that pull them away from just being straightforward antagonists. Even in the most plot-heavy scenes, every opportunity to showcase their uniqueness is seized.
Burning baby fish swimming all around your head.
Adam, a monster built to usher in a new age of demon-human hybrids, somehow ends up having this conversation.
You're like Tony Robbins, if he was a big, scary Frankenstein-looking. You're exactly like Tony Robbins.
The Master, a monstrous vampire overlord, is played with a level of theatricality that occasionally borders on the absurd.
My time is come, glory! Glory!
Mayor Wilkins sometimes seems more concerned with germs and proper hygiene than with world domination. And even Warren, despite being one of the most unpleasant characters in the series, occasionally benefits from the comedic dynamic he shares with Jonathan and Andrew. There is one notable exception to all this, however, and that is Caleb. Caleb is probably the closest Buffy comes to creating a villain who is simply meant to be despised. But I'd argue this doesn't really hold up, since Caleb is played by Nathan Fillion. And you can't really hate Nathan Fillion. I mean,
Are you totally deranged?
Buffy villains are as diverse as they are memorable, so to keep things manageable, I'm going to focus on 3 characters who each represent one of the most common villain archetypes in storytelling: the Mirror, the Unstoppable Force, and the Sympathetic villain. 3 very different villains, but 3 perfect examples of how Buffy consistently finds ways to make its antagonists entertaining, complex, and ultimately lovable. Let's dive in. The first villain I'd like to look at is Faith, who represents one of the most common villain archetypes in storytelling, the Mirror. A mirror villain reflects something back at the protagonist. Rather than serving as their opposite, they show us our hero shaped by different circumstances, experiences, and choices. Faith fits this role perfectly. When she first arrives in Sunnydale, she seems less like a future villain and more like a second Buffy. Like Buffy, she's a Slayer. She shares the same powers, the same calling, and the same isolation that comes with it. In fact, for the first time in her life, Buffy has someone who actually understands what being a Slayer feels like. Early on, the two of them oscillate between feeling threatened by their similarities and bonding in ways only Slayers can. but it quickly becomes apparent that the similarities between them only go so far. Buffy has Giles, she has her mother, she has the Scoobies. Faith has spent most of her life without anything resembling a support system. While Buffy sees being a Slayer as a responsibility, Faith embraces it as freedom. She enjoys the violence more, she takes bigger risks, she answers to no one. Faith embodies something that exists throughout Buffy's story, the temptation to stop caring. To stop following rules, carrying responsibility for everyone else, being the person who always does the right thing. When Faith says, want, take, have, she's expressing a worldview that couldn't be further from Buffy's moral code. And yet, part of what makes their dynamic so compelling is that Buffy understands the appeal, and so do we. When she accidentally kills Alan Fincher, the deputy mayor, we witness the moment where the two Slayers begin responding to the same situation in completely different ways. Buffy wants accountability, Faith runs from it. From there, the distance between them grows larger and larger. Eventually, Faith joins the mayor, becoming one of the show's primary antagonists. But this is also where Buffy demonstrates what I talked about in the introduction. Instead of presenting Faith solely as a villain, the show keeps finding ways to remind us that beneath the violence, recklessness, and bad decisions is still a deeply damaged young woman looking for a place to belong. During this dark period of her story, alongside the schemes and the violence, we also get to see her excitedly jumping on her new bed in the apartment the mayor provides for her. She gets super excited over a PlayStation and over anything else that lets her know that he's taking care of her, because that's something she never really had before. These moments have little to do with villainy and everything to do with a desperate need for belonging. Over and over, we get to see how much his approval means to her. Beneath all the arrogance and self-destruction, there's a childlike need to feel wanted. These moments don't excuse her actions, but they do something much more important. They make it difficult to stop caring about her. The ultimate expression of the mirror dynamic between Faith and Buffy comes in Who Are You?, when the series takes the mirror metaphor and makes it literal. Faith steals Buffy's body and spends a brief period living her life. For the first time, she experiences what it feels like to be trusted, to be needed, to belong somewhere. And in doing so, she begins to confront something she'd spent years protecting herself from. How desperately she wanted the very connections she'd convinced herself weren't meant for her. That's why Faith's story feels tragic rather than satisfying. Every step she takes toward darkness feels less like the rise of a villain and more like watching someone slowly become the worst version of themselves. Faith isn't Buffy's opposite. She's Buffy after a few more disappointments, a little less support, and one too many people failing her. We don't watch Faith hoping she'll be destroyed. We watch her hoping she'll find her way back. The second villain I'd like to look at is Glory. Unlike Faith, whose likability comes from being vulnerable and from the empathy we feel watching her slowly lose her way, Glory is likable because she's simply enormous fun to watch. Which is quite remarkable considering she also happens to be one of the most powerful villains Buffy ever faces. Glory represents another classic villain archetype, the unstoppable force. An unstoppable force villain is defined by a power imbalance. They push the hero into situations where determination, skill, and courage are no longer enough. The hero isn't simply challenged, they're overwhelmed. Glory is an exiled hell god inhabiting a human body, and Buffy quickly learns she can barely slow her down, let alone defeat her. Throughout Season 5, every encounter with Glory reinforces the fact that if Glory wants something, there is very little anyone can do to stop her. And yet, despite being one of the most dangerous villains the show ever produced, Glory is also one of the funniest. She's vain, shallow, and egotistical. And not in a way you would expect from a character this powerful, with gravitas and authority, but almost as a hell god version of Cordelia Chase. a choice that greatly softens our perception of her immense power without ever taking that power away. What makes Glory particularly unusual is that, unlike many villains with this level of power, she isn't interested in conquest, domination, or even defeating the hero. Her motivation is surprisingly simple. She just wants to go home.
That's Glory's master plan?
Unfortunately, her plan for getting there happens to involve destroying the boundaries between dimensions and potentially ending the world. This creates a strangely amusing contrast. While everyone else experiences the situation as an apocalyptic crisis, Glory often behaves like somebody dealing with an extremely frustrating travel delay. And then there are her interactions with her minions. The traditional expectation for an all-powerful god is dignity, majesty, a certain degree of grandeur. Glory gets stuck with a group of devoted followers who are, well, just ridiculous.
Ow! Thank you.
The only person who would see these guys and think, ha, minion material, is maybe Harmony. This is why many of her scenes play less like encounters with an ancient deity and more like a deeply impatient manager dealing with incompetent employees. Even the way her lines are delivered contributes to this effect. A good example comes during her interrogation of Spike. The situation itself is genuinely threatening. Spike has been captured and tortured. Glory's trying to extract information from him. Let's look at how one of her lines reads on paper before we look at the scene itself. After Spike attempts to provoke her in order to create an opportunity to escape, she replies, "Shut up. I command you, shut up." A god saying this, you'd imagine it sounding intimidating. Instead,
Shut up! I command you, shut up!
Claire Kramer delivers it with the energy of somebody who is one minor inconvenience away from throwing a tantrum. That's what makes Glory so unusual. The show never asks us to forget how dangerous she is. In many ways, she's the most dangerous villain Buffy ever faces. But it also refuses to make her one-dimensional. Beneath the godhood, the mind-draining, and the apocalyptic stakes is somebody who is vain, impatient, dramatic, self-absorbed, and frequently hilarious. Which is why Glory manages to achieve something that should be almost impossible. She functions perfectly as an unstoppable force, and yet she's still incredibly fun to spend time with, one of the most entertaining characters in the entire season.
You boys like magic, don't you? Abracadabra.
While Fate perfectly embodies the mirror and Glory represents the textbook unstoppable force, Willow Rosenberg is a character so complex she defies simple categorization. Willow is distinct because she could easily dominate all three groups. She can be described as Buffy's darkest mirror, showing what happens when profound trauma turns into a desire for control rather than duty. At the same time, her immense, godlike magical power makes her an equally legitimate candidate for the unstoppable force. Yet, the reason Willow remains the absolute peak of the sympathetic villain lies in one crucial fact. This is Willow. Willow. Sympathetic villains usually arrive with a tragic backstory that justifies their motives. With Willow, it's different. We don't learn about her trauma through exposition or flashbacks. We experience the events that transform her into a villain with her in real time, week after week, over 6 years, culminating with Tara's tragic death. We love her because we grew up with her. Willow's motives at her darkest hour aren't an abstract desire for power, but raw, naked grief and unbearable pain following Tara's murder. This dark arc even twists into a distorted version of mercy. She does not want to destroy the world out of sheer malice. Instead, she feels the agonizing pain of the entire planet and wishes to end everyone's suffering by ending life itself. You cannot help but love and pity a villain whose apocalypse is triggered by a broken heart. Furthermore, Willow embodies a classic trait of the sympathetic villain. She activates when the system fails. Willow has little faith that conventional justice can provide any meaningful resolution. Warren is human, which means Buffy has to treat him as such. And even if he were punished through ordinary channels, it wouldn't really fix anything.
Now the one person who should be here is gone. A waste like you gets to live.
Her decision to take revenge into her own hands becomes a very complex emotional moment for the audience. On one hand, it is the point where her dark-like ability reaches its peak. The audience experiences a genuine sense of catharsis because we share Willow's grief and want justice for Tara. On the other hand, that satisfaction is immediately poisoned by discomfort. What Willow does to Warren is horrifying, but we do not perceive it as such because we care about Warren. It terrifies us because we realize we are losing her. Watching this familiar, beloved, once timid character
I said date.
flay a man alive means watching her cross a boundary from which there is no return, and that feels like a personal loss. The way how her reign of terror ends also exemplifies why she remains sympathetic. Strength and raw force could not stop her. She was defeated solely by pure love in the form of Xander, who appealed to the fading piece of humanity left inside her. Only then did that immense, unbearable grief finally release itself in its authentic form. Through tears, Willow finally returned to herself. Yet Buffy shows its maturity here by avoiding a shallow happy ending. The boundaries she crossed remain crossed. Warren is dead, Tara is not coming back, and Willow's actions can never be fully erased. She remains a character we love deeply, but her descent leaves a permanent, beautiful scar on the entire series. As we can see, Buffy uses different methods to make its villains likable, and together, they help create a world populated by memorable, fully realized characters. And that richness of characterization is one of the reasons the series continues to enjoy such a devoted cult following decades later. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more analysis like this, subscribe for more.